One of the fastest ways to make your design look amateur is bad colors. And the crazy thing is that most designers don't even realize that they're doing it. Today, I'm going to show you some of the biggest color mistakes beginners designers make. And I'm also going to show you how professionals actually think about colors and go about picking their colors. When I first got started, I thought that colors was mainly about picking, ones that look good together. But over time, I realized that it's more of a communication skill. They affect emotions, they affect readability. They also affect how professional your design looks and feels. First point I'm going to make is probably the most obvious, which is that colors actually create emotions, which is one of the things that beginner designers don't really understand. People don't just see colors, they also feel it. For example, we all know blue decides trust or reliability, green is for growth or nature, and red is for energy or urgency, yellow is like attention, which is why you will notice banks often use, blue colors, while environmental brands they use green. You might find yellows in schools, and you find red in a lot of sports, or colors like orange appear often in food. This isn't just a coincidence. There's a reason why these designers have chosen to pick these colors for these specific industries and why they've stood for many years. Another thing when it comes to design is that you must be intentional. Stop using too many colors, which is one of the biggest mistake beginners designers tend to do. They tend to use too many colors. Beginner designers often think that more colors makes their design more exciting or more trendy. But in reality, what it actually does is make it seem, look, and feel chaotic. One of the ways I go about design is I have my primary color, my secondary color, and I have an accent color that I barely use in the design except to highlight certain aspects of design that I feel needs to be highlighted. Those three colors don't include my black and white. I usually use an off black and an off white just for the sake of it because I don't like using um 6 Fs or 6 zeros. I'm sure one thing you will notice is that strong, big brands usually use very surprisingly few colors. And in any industry, really, whether it's clothes, tech, food, or whatever, the top brands, they usually use few colors. And I think there's a reason for that. Another thing is that contrast is actually more important than the colors you're using themselves. Most designers tend to focus on the colors they're going to be using. Professional designers focus more on the contrast because if people cannot read the design, then it doesn't really matter how beautiful it looks. Another mistake beginner designers usually do is by changing colors or changing tones throughout one single project. One page will be using blue and another page using another blue and another page, maybe another random color. But professional designers stick to a single color palette, one that suits their brand, and they stick to the same colors throughout the entire project. You can't introduce random colors throughout the project because it becomes unintentional. Consistency makes a design look intentional and professional. And if it's one single brand, then one single project, then all the colors should work in alignment in every single project for that brand. That's how you create an intentional brand, which equals a professional brand, which will increase the trust in that brand to the masses. Colors should also support the message of the company you're designing for. You know, professional designers do not choose colors because they like them or they like the way the colors go together. They pick them because it supports the message. For example, I'm sure you will notice most luxury brands, we think about, I don't know, Chanel or Gucci or things like that, they use these luxury off blacks or off whites or gold colors. Kid brands use more colors, a larger selection of colors. For example, the brighter colors like three primary colors. And of course, most tech brands or bank brands, they use the blue because blue is widely recognized for something to trust. Simplicity usually wins. The more I learn about design, the more I tend to realize that simplicity wins. Most beginner designers think that professional design is complicated, but it's actually really simple and deliberate. Principle that less is more has always been one of my favorites because it's just further prove that simplicity wins. I do tend to like to make my designs more simple than complicated because, of course, it betrays more deliberate actions, hence personality. One thing I've learned after years of designing is that coloring or colors isn't something that you learn overnight, and it never really has been. Even now, I'm constantly learning and improving, but understanding the basic principles makes a huge difference in your work, and it makes a difference to people who see your work. It will make it seem more professional. Even though you can't master it overnight, you can still learn it over time. And spending a lot of time consuming designs from actual professionals obviously helps a lot. You tend to see the colors they use and the way they put the layouts together, including the contrast and the way they simplify a design rather than complicating it. You really just have to learn your own system and find out what kind of designer you are, and a way for you to be able to implement colors in a way that works and a way that's professional, but still suited to your personality. You know, every designer has a different way of going about their layouts and mainly their colors, since colors is what separates beginners from professional, mainly in my point of view. And I'm sure as you go on, you will start to have like color palettes that you turn to for certain industries, or simple rules like the 60-30-10, one of my favorites. In different ways, you can always reference back to the color wheel and the different angles of picking the colors, but you should constantly be looking at inspiration or references of how professionals do their work, reading up more on the color theory. But you don't have to learn every color theory rule. Like if you're a beginner designer, don't worry, you don't have to memorize every color theory rule. You just have to focus on understanding why colors work and how they create emotion and how they help communicate a message. And I'm sure the more you do that, that's when your designs will start to look more intentional rather than random, and more professional to viewers, more professional to clients, to employees, people who aren't necessarily trained in a designer's eye. But even then, more professional to professional designers, when they view your work, they'll be able to see the designer's intention. If you found this video useful, subscribe and go ahead and like, and you can comment if you'd like to see a next video from me based on any topic. I'll be making more videos from now on about graphic design, about branding, and about website design, and just about lessons I've learned along my design journey.